So we will officially open at 9:05 this morning. And if we could do a roll call of the committee members. I will just make sure that we have all our committee members here. Committee members, if you could do your roll call, make sure that we have our quorum.
Okay, Lisa Martin.
Thank you.
Patrick McPhillips.
Do you want the administrators to go through theirs too?
Is that all our committee members now that we have here this morning?
That's the school committee members, yes.
Okay, and yes, now administrators attending.
Brad Morgan, Superintendent.
Gary Bavaro, Race Assistant Superintendent.
Nancy Haynes, Business Manager.
Jeremy Hammond, Business Manager. Sorry, that was Kevin Cormier. This is Jeremy Hammond, Director of Operations.
So we do have one matter on our, I guess, plate that is not on the agenda related to the roll call that we will need to address. We did have a resignation of one of our members. I received an email last evening that Randy will be resigning from this committee, just so that everyone is aware. So the next order of business, if we could take a look at the minutes from April 17th.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting.
We have a motion.
Second.
So roll call.
Yes. Yes, Lisa Martin, yes.
Patrick McPhillips, yes.
Kim Craven, yes. That motion carries. So the next order of business for today is to look at some of the budget information. I had asked Nancy if she could give us an update so that we could have a discussion on the FY25 budget. If I could turn the floor over to her to walk us through what the end of the year looked like.
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Wait, great. So we are still kind of in the thick of it. We just recently did our one of our final warrants for FY25. It's been, a busy couple of weeks trying to get things pulled together, reviewing purchase orders and that type of thing. So what I'm giving you for numbers right now is really just how I think it's going to end up. We think as far as expenses go, on the expense side, that we'll end up with roughly just under $3 million remaining in the budget. We started with 65 million and we'll end up with just under 3 million available. And that is one of the things that we did this year. We had a number of concerns related to out-of-district tuitions throughout the year, and those were running extremely high, higher than we anticipated, both on the transportation and on the tuition side. So we've been kind of watching that month after month. We just recently got some of the final invoices and purchase order changes for all the tuition. So we did end up in a better position than I expected to. Still needing to add funding to those lines, and we did that earlier this year. We did a transfer mostly related to tuitions. So that's one of the biggest areas where we had changes this year, I would say. As far as the remaining budget lines, a lot of departments we've asked throughout the year to be as conservative as possible. We've held back. We didn't freeze the budget, but we essentially said, if you don't absolutely have to have this, please don't purchase it, because we know we know that we used all of our E&D to support the FY26 budget. So we wanted to make sure that we, if possible, could start to replenish that so that we wouldn't have another problem in FY27 when we go to certify our E&D. So that's the good news, I would say. On the expense side, I should have a version available for people to look at shortly. I just have a few more things to work on to clean it up and make sure I'm not missing any POs that are going to be rolled and that type of thing. As far as the revenue side, we have a couple of things to talk about in that area. We had in FY24, we had to, when Minuteman Neshoba Health had to disband, we were required to send them a large payment so that if claims came in past June 30th, they would have the funding to pay those. During the year, this year, earlier, I believe it was maybe in the March timeframe, they went through their records and looked at the claims and decided that they could give back to the communities a good portion of the fund balance that they were holding for that purpose. So we did receive back I believe it was just over $1 million from Minuteman Neshoba. It might have even been a little bit higher. And portion of that we had paid from school choice funds. I did check with DESE on that. We were allowed to replenish school choice only up to the amount that we originally took out. So we did that. In addition to that, the remaining amount that they gave us ended up in will end up in the general fund, and that will be over and above any estimates that we had for this year, as we didn't anticipate those funds coming back. I'm just going to give you the amount of that, if you can hang 1 second. So the amount that went back to the general fund was $536,000. And that, again, this was not expected. We didn't know what those returns would be. And that's over and above what we anticipated. In addition to that, we had some of the normal revenue increases that we've been having each year. We had a little bit more come in homeless transportation, and we had a return of fund balance from the Valley Collaborative of just under $250,000. So together with those, we should be in the roughly $1 million in revenue over anticipated. So that we did have a one-time gain on that. That's I guess in both areas, both expenses and revenue, that's good news. Once everything is settled, the process for this will be that we have to submit to the Division of Local Services our balance sheet and a bunch of other schedules. They certify the excess and deficiency. This normally would happen sometime between October and January. Typically, they get the town's tax rates certified first, and then they go back to the regional schools and certify E&D. So we will hopefully, if all goes well, know this for the FY27 budget process. And it can't be, these funds can't be accessed really in any, I mean, school choice funds maybe, but the closeout of FY25 wouldn't be accessible until the FY27, roughly the FY27 budget process. I don't know if there's any, so as far as FY25 and state aid, they are giving us some additional circuit breaker funds. And these funds are, it looks mainly due to the increase from about 47% to 75% reimbursement on special ed transportation. And those funds are over and above what we expected. We can use them we can deposit them in FY25 in circuit breaker or FY26 circuit breaker. Either way, they have to go in the circuit breaker fund. One of the things I included in the packet was the calculation for how they did that. I don't think we have to go through those details unless someone has a specific question. My recommendation on this is since we don't need it for FY25, some towns, cities and towns and regional schools are having to use those circuit breaker funds to balance their FY25 budget. So that's why they freed that up to allow us to do either or. So my recommendation is we put it in FY26. It probably won't change the end result either way, but it allows us to carry over more into FY27 if we have a higher FY26 revenue. So the way the circuit breaker funding works is we're allowed to carry one full year over into the next fiscal year, and right now we're under that amount regardless. Brad, did you have a question?
Yes, I just wanted to ask Nancy, can you just explain to the group, the past couple of years anyway, we've been using a significant amount of excess and deficiency money to support our budget. And I think we've talked about it in the past that is really not a good practice, because you get back less and less every year, and you can get to the point where that money just isn't there anymore. So can you just try to explain the importance of having that money back in E&D?
Yeah, and I mean, one of the things I've been sort of wrestling with, one of the major issues we had with FY26's budget is that we had a lower E&D number. And again, the E&D number, some of this is just things that happen throughout the year and your end results. So if you can't duplicate it in a future year and you used it for your budget, that means in a future year you're going to have a problem. So yeah, replenishing that is great for a number of reasons. One is that when we go out and borrow money, which we still have pretty large borrowing we need to do for the high school project and the accelerated repair each year, we're rolling a short-term borrowing. And they look at our reserves. That's one area that they look at, is if your reserves go down, why did they go down, and how that may affect our bond rating. So for having it come back like this that'll be good. That'll be good for those renewals, and it helps with the interest rates that we receive as well. So I think one of the things I was considering is that we should have, maybe not at this meeting, but at a separate meeting, a discussion about how much E&D can we set that so that it's either by policy or by just procedure, that we don't try to avoid big swings in that, and use what we think we need to use to help support budgets without it interfering with reserves. And some districts do have that. They have policies on fund balance and that type of thing. If our E&D comes in higher than 5% of our budget, our future budget, they require us to use that. So that's already in place by statute. Looks like we have some questions.
Yes, Patrick, please. Patrick, I saw your hand.
Sorry, I couldn't unmute. So Nancy, I do agree, and I feel like I've been vocal about making sure we don't spend the E&D money every year. Is there a way for us to start next year saving more E&D money without it impacting more cuts? Because I know we're currently using E&D money to help fund the budget. So is that going to impact, next year our bottom line for the budget if we start saving for E&D? Like, more cuts will need to be made?
I mean, I think ultimately what revenues we use for next year's budget would be, we review, how the budget looks and what we have available for funding, and then the school committee would have those discussions. We may have some recommendation. I mean, you can't keep more. I guess you could keep, if your E&D ends up certified each year and you're more than 5%, you have to send that back. So, I mean, some districts have sort of a recommended range, like a 3 to 5% in E&D or something like that, so that you have a decent amount in reserves for the case you never know what could happen. But it wouldn't necessarily result in cuts. I mean, you have to collectively look at all the aspects of the budget and the revenue that we're expecting.
No, yeah, I understand. I just know that we are using E&D to help supplement the budget currently. So by not doing that,
yeah, you wouldn't be able to. You can't just, I think, take all of it and not use it towards next year's budget, or we'll have a large revenue deficit.
Okay.
And I was going to pull that up. I think it's $1.6 million change
Thank
that
you,
we're
Pat.
using to support FY26.
Lisa.
You answered my borrowing question. Do you have the sheet that shows how much we have used for E&D in the last few years or over the last 5 years? And if that could be sent to the group.
Sure.
I mean, we don't need it today, but I think that that's important to see is like how much we have used.
Yeah, and one of those issues with E&D being lower or higher, I guess higher is an easier problem to deal with, but from FY23's end of year to the FY24's end of year, our E&D went down to $1,872,000. And what that did is it out of the gate, because we used $2.6 million the year before, right out of the gate before we did anything with our budget, looked at any revenues, we end up with a deficit. So that, I think trying to be consistent with the amount that we're targeting to use is probably going to be helpful for everybody, the district and the towns, because we don't create big swings in either town assessments or the budget numbers. But yeah, I'm happy to share that.
I forgot my last question. I'll come back.
Well, maybe my questions will help you remember. Thanks, Nancy. First, I appreciate all the work. I know it's end of year and you're trying to finish your work, and we placed more work on you by having this meeting today. So I really appreciate everything that you've gathered. Obviously, our situation is very similar to the municipalities when it comes to E&D. It's the equivalent of their free cash, and not just in our community, but the budgets, because of the lack of full support from the state, has impacted the schools, which then impacts the municipal side. But certainly we are all, whether it be North Middlesex or others, schools are part of the community. We are not separate. Schools are just like another department. We all have to work together to make our communities work. Education is a big part of it. And so one of the things that I look at is how do we all make our municipalities work? And when I look at the challenges, there are many. And so we've had some good things happen to us that I think can help us start to think towards the future. And so when I look back at the past years, the E&D has swung. So I think we can start to, just like the municipal side, we all want to rebuild that so that we have something to fall back on should there be a big expenditure that comes up, so that we have a little bit of a cushion. Thinking of how we do that, whether we set each year, we can talk about something like that, a percentage to work towards that, to fill that back up, because I saw that it was much higher and then it went down to nothing. So to start to rebuild that, I think, is a good goal for this committee. The other thing is trying to factor in now, based on where we ended up in this fiscal year and years prior, with what we now know moving into FY26, with the increase in the per pupil. So while I would love to be able to project forward 5 years of what the district might start to look like, I think we need to start looking at least 2 years, because we know it's going to be 2 years for the funding formula. So we can't count on, certainly, what happened with the insurance. That's a one-time thing. We can't start to think in terms of staffing or long-term with that funding. The supplemental, we can't start anything long-term with that funding, because that in essence is a one-time. So anything moving forward, we have to think of exactly what we have now for the short term, and quite honestly, it might be for the long term as well. And I think as part of our discussion around finances, we might want to refer something over to the legislative advocacy around transportation. So if we can think of that as part of our process for finance and budgeting, and hopefully the superintendent can chime in on this particular one. During the hearing for the transportation funding, while we were all advocating for full funding of transportation based on the requirements and the mandate from the state, the chair did come back and say, have you ever thought of trying to change the legislation? And we know that they didn't give us the full funding. So I think our legislative advocacy committee might want to take that to our legislators. I think that door was open to perhaps try to change that. And if I think about that, where we didn't get full funding, leaves that door open to try to change that, to see if we can't save some money on transportation. So I think from our perspective, Nancy, if you can help guide us over the next several months for the kind of 2-year planning based on what we know the outcomes of FY25, that would be helpful. Superintendent, you had a thought?
Sure. Just wanted to share that the advocacy is ongoing with state representatives. Myself and 2 other superintendents are engaged in that effort. But above and beyond getting up to 100% reimbursement, we are looking to have them look at the procurement laws as well around bidding, which is something that goes completely unsupervised at this point. It's not policed in any way. So it does leave districts having to accept whatever the bid is when you only get one bid and you're required to provide that transportation. So that is an ongoing effort over the summer.
Thank you for adding that in. I know that you have been very vocal about that since I've been on the committee. I've learned a lot from you on that end about what is sort of going on with the limitations of bids coming in, that we're not getting a lot of competition out there, which limits the ability of the district to negotiate if there's no one coming in with other bids. Makes it really hard. But that is an important piece. And we do need to help with that. I think that everybody should recognize the level of advocacy that is going on. There's been a lot of time and investment from folks that are on the call today and you to make some of this happen. The supplemental money just didn't drop out of the sky. It took a lot of work to make that happen. So appreciate that. But, our committee, the subcommittee of the school committee should be there to support that as well. Lisa.
Robin, will you just make a note that we talked to Keenan because he's the chair of the advocacy group, and to make sure that he's on board with what Kim is saying. And I think transportation is a great way to start moving forward.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Robin. Can I go back to my question that I had earlier?
Absolutely.
With Andy? Nancy, has there been any year that we have not used E&D to help our budget in any way?
I believe way back, but let me look and see what I have.
You can get it to me at a different time.
We've been using it in FY14. I'd say we used just a little bit. We used $250,000 in FY14.
But we didn't have a big account at that time. I mean, there wasn't a lot in it.
$1.5 million.
Okay. All right.
And
that's
so,
it.
the report that I'll share has the percentage. It's in our also in our usually it's in our public hearing document or presentation. We put that the E&D history in there with the percentage used towards the budget. I'll forward that to everybody.
So one thing that I think our committee could reflect upon and bring back to the full board, at some point, I'm certainly not prepared to do that today. I think we need to give Nancy more time with closeout and to see where everything completely falls out. But I have been vocal about this, to think about where we fall in the end, after everything is certified, to see where the municipalities are and where our budget is. We asked for a certain budget. We were granted that budget. If we are coming in with unexpected funds over budget, we need to be mindful of what we're doing. And I think emotionally, there could be sentiment that we need to react and move forward with going back to how things were. Personally, I don't think that we can do that because we don't know what is happening for the future. We still need to proceed with the work that is going on with the small committee, working with the superintendent for long-term strategies for the district, to see what can be brought to the district in terms of additional creative solutions to building use, building maintenance, reuse, whatever you might call it, bringing additional education resources to the district, because some of this funding is just one time, and so we can't go, I don't want to say backwards, we can't go back to how things were, because we don't, in my perspective, we don't know what the future is going to hold. So it might be a stopgap, but we don't have a long enough lens on it. That's just my perspective. I'd love to hear other committee members' perspective. You've been doing this longer than me, and particularly Superintendent yours and Nancy, because you know the numbers best. Help me try to see it through your lens and what you're thinking these numbers mean for us now and for the future.
So I think from a budget management standpoint, I think we've reached a point where all three towns are struggling. I think the district is also struggling to maintain level services, which we were not able to follow through with for FY26 due to the cuts that had to be made. So I would recommend that we're very, very cautious with any additional monies that we receive, simply because unless there is a change to the current formula, which I do think does have some traction at this point, having the opportunity to speak twice at the State House this year was something I've never had the opportunity to do before. I don't think it is just school districts. It is also the American Federation of Teachers, the Mass Teachers Association. It really seems to be an effort that many of our legislators are also pushing for now as well. So I would recommend just to be very cautious, because if things don't change, looking at level services for next year, we are likely going to be in the same situation that we were in FY26, where again, we're looking at using E&D to basically support our budget. And at a certain point in time, the free cash won't be there if we continue to do that. So I would just recommend, again, just being cautious. I don't know, Nancy, if you feel any differently.
Go ahead, Lisa.
All right. Yeah, I was sorry. I was on mute. I was trying to find that.
Yep. Go ahead, Nancy.
Tab. Yeah. No, I agree. I think one of the things that is happening with the supplemental budget and the FY26 budget is there has been a lot of advocacy to increase some of those numbers. The question will be, watching what's happening at the state level, do they have the financing, the funding to continue with some of those? We do project we have a 5-year projection that we can literally take assumptions and play with and put those in, put what we think is going to happen at the state level with Chapter 70 and the transportation numbers, do a little bit more deep review maybe of the next 2 years and kind of talk through what assumptions we want to use, and an assumption on the E&D number, that type of thing. We can kind of essentially back into where our number would need to be based on those assumptions. And again, we don't really get a lot of those numbers until the governor's proposal in January. So it's always hard to sort of forecast what she's going to do or what's going to come out and be included until then. But anyway, we do have that option to take a look at some of that and start thinking about it right now.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. Like I said, I know that there's the 5-year, but I think focusing on the next two, we have a little bit more known. And as they work on the formula, hopefully that's going to bode a little bit brighter light for us for those 3 years after the first two, hopefully. Lisa.
Brad, have you started discussions with any of the towns on, like, you've done budget summits, or are those coming up?
Those will start again in August.
Okay. And I do believe that we do need to be cautious and mindful. We do need to be mindful of the pressure on our towns as well as our districts, like everyone has stated, because we have to be partners in this with our communities. I mean, our communities have to support us. We have to support our communities. So that's where we have to do our handshakes and make sure that we're spending the money at a quality level, but also being the same partner to our communities. So that's my take.
At this juncture, does anyone on the committee have any additional comments? I would like to go ahead and go back to the agenda item for the public comment, because I'm sure that there's folks that might have things to say from our community that are on the call today. If there's anyone of the attendees that would like to weigh in on this discussion. I'm not seeing any raised hands. There we go.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Kathy, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Are you talking about the individual town representation?
Right now we're just doing the public comment. So I held the public
Oh, I'm
comment
sorry.
so the school committee had the opportunity to discuss this, so that if you now want to have any comments, just general public comment.
Okay, so yeah, so I was the appointed representative to finance for Ashby last year. And as I've stated in the past, I would be interested in continuing in that role. Probably now more than ever, I think it's important, both from an optics standpoint, as well as a practical standpoint, that Ashby have adequate representation. So I would like that to be considered when you get to that portion of the agenda. Thank you.
Okay. Pat, you have a hand raised.
Go ahead, Pat, you're all set.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay, good. No, I'm up in Maine. So the question I have, and I want to stay focused on the agenda. So this is just basically about the budgetary. So with what's going on with Ashby Elementary School and the fact that I have heard from Dave, they don't plan on renovating it. So that's going to cause another problem. And it should have been brought up to the board last year. And what are they going to do? I mean, the issue is, how are we going to handle that? We're not doing anything about it. And I know, Brad, we still have to wait the year, like you said. And that's fine, and I agree with it. But how is that all added into the budget? What's the cost of just maintaining that building in an idle state like it is? Or even if we let somebody use it, then that whole bill should be transferred to them for the year. And that's my concern. That's it for me. Thanks. I'll wait until the public comment on the other thing.
Thank you. Melissa.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
The packet in regards to previous minutes, and I just wanted to say that I was discouraged in reading that it was said that too much time has been wasted on talking about Ashby Elementary, because as an Ashby resident, you know, we do value our school and what is happening, and so it's discouraging that the committee would represent that too much time has been wasted talking about Ashby Elementary. And so I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us and listening to our discussion. Going back now to just committee members, I don't see any other public input. From our discussion, key takeaways for the closeout of 25 going into 26 budget, what we've received from Nancy in our packet for the money coming in from the state, any key takeaways that we should note to share at our next committee meeting, full committee meeting. I guess my recap would be about trying to replenish the E&D as a key point. Another key point being that much of this is one-time funding that is not sustainable at this point, that we don't know what will be coming in next year, so that we would not be able to make any long-term decisions based on the funding that came in. Are probably my two key takeaways that we should be making sure we share forward. Patrick.
We had a question coming over Q&A during the open kind of dialogue with the town. Do you want me to read that just for everybody?
Yes, please.
Hello, Jennifer Fours here. There's a lot of discussion out there around the extra funding. While it does not give us the ability to reopen AES, does it give us the ability to add support back into the classrooms, even in the form of para support on a one-year contract? Given the large class sizes, this would be so helpful. Thank you for your time. I think that's a pretty good question. It's a very valid argument. So I thought I'd bring that up.
So on that side of it, I think probably Gary, I would maybe toss this to you and Brad to take a look at with Nancy, what that might look like from a cost perspective. One of the things that we do need to be conscious of as a committee, if that is going to bring us outside of the budget that we requested, and what does that look like, right? We requested a specific budget to operate with, and how does that work if we go outside of the budget that we voted on and was approved? And that I don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah, we can certainly take a look at that, and you know, we're also continuing to monitor even just our kindergarten enrollment numbers at the two elementary schools to make sure that if they get to that point that we need another classroom, you know, that we have the funding available. So that might be one of those funding areas that we could use that as a resource. But we can take a look at it. Mr. Morgan, Nancy Hayes, and I can look at that and come back to the committee.
Okay, and probably the committee as a whole, maybe at our August meeting.
Sure.
So I guess while it's on topic, I guess that is something I still am worried about is class sizes. Are there any grades or any schools that you see a concern or somewhere where the numbers are higher than we thought they would be?
I don't think anything's jumping out right now as far as what we were projecting. I think kindergarten is one we're watching closely just because we will have students register right up into late August.
Okay.
So that's something that we do have to pay close attention to. But I think right now everything else is pretty accurate with the projections that we had from the reductions that had to be made.
So from a budgetary perspective, if the class sizes do increase in such a way that it creates the need for another classroom, additional staff, and that puts us over the requested and approved budget. Because I'm new at this, I need a little coaching here. Does that mean you come back to the whole school committee to ask for a change in the budget? We've already gone to the municipalities, got it approved. Is it something that we work in with the supplemental fundings? Mechanically, what do we need to make sure that we do to do it correctly with the whole school committee?
Nancy, do you want to like that?
It goes beyond finance committee.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Sure. So we really can't, I suppose if we have additional revenue that we can allocate right now, we don't. I included that in the packet for the FY26. I would say we're a little bit underfunded because of the assessments that they increased. So we're already a little bit out of the gate looking not super great. Now, having said that, once all staff are hired and we have all the placements and all the teachers in place, and I'd say we're almost there with a lot of that. Sometimes those salary lines can change, meaning we hired somebody at a different step. We didn't hire somebody at a top step, and it can go the other way as well. So once all those positions are in place, we would have a pretty good idea of what the final salary would look like. There could potentially be room in there. In addition to that, we do have preschool revolving, which has room to potentially, say, pick up a para, and we could reallocate a budget space there. And again, we would probably be letting everybody know that we're doing that, but we could potentially cover something like that through that mechanism. There's also always school choice funding. That's up to the prerogative of the school committee, though. So there are some options without changing the budget to make small adjustments, provided everybody is on board.
Okay, thanks. I also know for FY26, we had talked in the regular meeting at one point that there had been for student activities a year prior that there was discussion around fundraising that didn't come to fruition. And I know this is small funding around for the stipends. There was the increase now in the fees to try to offset all the activities and the costs going into that. Hopefully, again, while it's a small, very, very small piece of the budget, that we can track that and to make sure that those pieces are covering itself a little bit better to help in some ways. So that's not drawing on some of that, because if that's covering itself, maybe some of those funds can offset some of the paraprofessional too. Lisa.
There are times, Kim, when like a special education student will move into the district and we do need to cover those costs. So that's where Nancy and Gary and Brad work with the budget, within the budget, to cover those costs and find ways.
Yeah.
And those are not necessarily things that come back to the committee. And right, Nancy? I've never had, like, if you've had to add a para for a student, we've never had to approve that.
Yeah, we try to work with what we do have. We also do have a federal funds for the special education allocation grant, where we do use those to support paras, those funds. And we don't have our number for next year yet, but sometimes we end up with some space in one of those grants as well. So we can potentially swing some, if we have an unanticipated need in a particular year, we can swing into a grant or not, depending on the amounts. So we usually don't have huge swings on some of these. I mean, an occasional here or there change throughout the year. And I believe Brad generally will say what's happening in general in an overview and for school committee, just, yeah, this is what it's looking like, or we have new placements or not, that type of thing. So you should hear one way or the other.
And usually, Kim, Brad will give a beginning of the year report to us and say, this is what we've added, this is where we stand, just to give us the report.
Yeah, and I mean that if there was something completely out of budget that they needed, they would have to come back to us, not things that are operating day-to-day operations. They don't need to come back to us. I was thinking if there was something completely out of budget that was needed. Okay. If there's not any other questions on that, I would like to move forward on the community representation. Let me make sure we don't have any other hands up.
So before we go into that, and we may not need a discussion around it, because I have reached out to Carrie Battersby if she would like to take a position on the finance committee.
I was going to do that last under business not anticipated.
Okay, we'll go back there.
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, with Randy, I was going to do it. Not business not reasonably anticipated.
Okay, got it.
I just found out last night, so sorry. Yeah. Community representation. So it had been the practice, from my understanding, that there was community representation for folks to be on. I'd like to just, my perspective on it, I would love to see liaisons to the communities from each town participating. I think there's strength in hearing the voice outside of the committee to have a person from each community that is not an elected, but someone that has an interest. I would love to see one from each community. I think the more community input and voices that are heard for me on a committee like this, I'd love to hear it. So I'd like to hear from the rest of the finance committee members, their thoughts on that topic. Patrick.
Yeah, I would be comfortable with continuing with that if it is all three towns are able to have representation. I understand right now Ashby doesn't have school committee member representation. Hopefully Carrie's willing to join this committee. That would be great. But I think all three towns should have the ability to have a representative if we're going to continue with that. Thank you.
So in terms of process, I mean, you know, it wouldn't be a voting member, it would be an input member, someone to help sort of gather, have input, a different lens. So when you typically do these ad hoc kind of committees, do you leave it up to the general school committee? Lisa, would you be helping as school committee chair, help us find the three folks? Would we leave it to the electeds? What does everybody else on the committee think? The process should be to gather the interested parties from the community.
Lisa, can you refresh my memory? I know last year was, I think, the first year, and we just announced it to the public, and we got applicants to submit resumes, and then we did a quick little interview. Was that during the finance subcommittee meeting, or was that during an open school committee meeting?
It was during the finance committee because we only asked for the liaison to be in the finance committee.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, something set my Alexa off, and so it was going off, and I couldn't answer right away.
No, that's fine. I thought that worked fairly well last year as far as, we had time ahead to review their resumes and then have a few minutes to publicly interview.
Yeah,
I
and
thought that worked really well.
Yeah, and Robin had made like the advertisement and all of that, and we offered it to Ashby because we didn't have an Ashby representative. And then, but we can make it available to everyone, every town to have one. I do have one concern is that I don't want to bog our finance meetings down a lot. But I do know how important it is for representation from all of our towns. I just want to be cognizant of that because we are taking up our administrators' times too. And, they need to finish things. That's just my one concern. And I am fine with, if it's all three towns, having a representative. But it does make, we also have to consider, it does make more work for Robin to send out information to 3 more members. And then we need to also go through, are they just going to be a liaison? Are they going to have access to our documents, or is it just our public documents? So there's those discussions as well. I mean, the public does have access to everything in our open meeting. And I don't think there's non-access to other things, but like executive session, we would not want them in executive session.
Correct. They would be, from my vantage point, liaisons, all public documents, not executive sessions, things of that nature, so that they can just have a different pulse, a different lens, feedback, which I think can enrich our discussions. Perhaps they're going to other meetings in the community, hearing different things. I think the feedback is important, but they would just have input, not necessarily votes. And because they're not elected, they're not being sworn in the same fashion that we are, that they wouldn't be doing those other meetings. They wouldn't, if there was something that was not a public document yet, that they wouldn't be able to look at those documents. And so I haven't looked at the past posting, but if I don't want to bog it down and have to have us have another meeting before that gets posted.
Kim, if you want to, I'm fine with giving, and I'm sure Patrick is too, if you want to look at what Robin has and work on that, that's fine. I mean,
okay. And then I'm sure that if it worked last year, it's probably fine. But if I could just glance at it real quick, and then we could get it posted so that we can get it out there and invite folks in for our next meeting.
Sure, I'll draft, I'll look at what we did last year. I'll draft it up and I'll share it with you, Kim, and you can let me know where to go from there.
And Kim, we could have a finance meeting where we necessarily don't need the administrators on it if we're doing the interviews, and that would free up their time. And so that's what I would suggest is.
I agree with that. They wouldn't have to be in on the interviews. Okay. I don't believe that we need a formal vote on that. We'll just proceed. The next topic, the infrastructure state funding.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Kim. I think that we have a attendee with their hand raised. So I don't know if you want to wait. I believe it has to do with this discussion.
Yes, we can take that. Thank you.
Okay. Give me 1 minute, Pat, and I will give you permission to. You're all set,
No.
Pat.
Thank you very much. So I do have a concern with the voting of all that and stuff like that. But the question that I heard that just came into play was the Ashby representative may be joining the committee. I heard that a little bit before we got into this discussion. So then if we have that, why are we all have public comment unless you're going to eliminate public comment from the communities to only allow the representative to present for the communities. We all have access to the documents in the public. So I agree, bogging us down. I will speak up in a public comment, whether people like it or not. I will speak up. And I think that that's a very valuable thing that you guys interact with the public, unlike other committees don't. So that's very, very important. So it's almost the same as everybody that joins is a representative of their community. But I would like to see the school Ashby School Committee member get in there with the finance to get some of this stuff moving forward as to how we're going to do the school and stuff. That's my opinion. And I would just leave it at that for now. But yeah, I think you do give us public comment as it is. So we're all pretty much a representative. I don't think that you should allow one town if the other two opt out. And I think you have to allow all three, no matter what. If one opts out, then it's a disadvantage to that town altogether to have other people in there advocating. That's my opinion, but I'll leave it alone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So now the infrastructure state funding. Is that Brad?
Lisa, I think Lisa requested this to be added.
This was with the money that Senator Cronin had given to
The 250.
250 and Senator Kennedy had given of the 150. So I think we just need to explain what the money is and where we're thinking of using it. Or because I know that Kennedy's money is only for Pepperell, but that's because his money that he is given from the state only is for Pepperell. And Cronin represents Townsend and Ashby, and so his money is only for Townsend and Ashby.
Okay, so this is something that would have to be discussed by the committee. I know that in Pepperell, the $150,000, there has been some preliminary discussions with the town as well around the front entryway of Varnum Brook. It is both the circle and the wall are beginning to fall apart in several areas. So that has not been something that we have been able to take care of through capital. So it looks like some of that money may be able to be used there. But again, that would be a discussion with the school committee. As for Ashby and Townsend, looking at least initially proposing using some of that money, if need be, to hook Squanicook up to a generator. It is the only school right now, to my knowledge, it does not have a backup generator. So we have had issues with that in the past with pre-K and with the rental, which would now be an elementary school being there if we were to lose power, not having the ability to operate any of the electrical components of the building. But again, that's something that would have to be discussed with the committee as a whole.
And again,
Yeah.
these are
Kim, I just have a question. Where's the shelter if there is a disaster in Townsend? Is it the high school or is it a different?
I'm trying to think for
I think it was Hawthorne Brook.
Hawthorne Brook?
It may have changed. They did do some kind of plans, I think, for the Board of Health location at the high school. So I don't know, they may have changed it.
Yeah, I'm trying to think when the mass inoculation plan. I can look that up. I mean, the cooling centers typically happen at the library and the senior center, but I'll look that up for certain. But I'm trying to think back to my team of days, and I can't remember like when generators were purchased with some different funding. But I will put that on my to-do list to find out where the plans are.
Just because with this going into with us putting a generator at Squanicook, this is another shelter that could be potentially used for
Right.
any kind of crisis.
Right. Interestingly, when the fire happened at Pine Ridge, we used the church.
Okay.
We used St. John's. So I feel this discussion, you know, I want to make sure that we don't get into sort of day-to-day operations and choices. While I might have my own personal opinions about the 250 and where it gets spent, we do need to rely on the administration. So Brad, you know, we do have to rely on you for some of these investments. And I do think we need to give you an answer, right? Probably by the August meeting, and it goes beyond finance. Lisa, do you want finance to make recommendations to the full committee, or do you just want to discuss it at the full meeting?
It'd probably be easier to give a recommendation to the full committee and say this is how things should be spent, or the finance committee could ask Brad to bring forward a few proposals and say this is how we should do it. I mean, Brad, Nancy, Kevin, Gary, do you have an opinion on this? Because we're asking you to do the work for us. We're not.
Sure. I honestly think now that it has become a reality, we certainly have some ideas on our capital list that we would like to look at and review. I would like to, if at all possible, bring recommendations to the August school committee meeting or a finance committee prior to the August school committee meeting. I mean, just to give you an idea, I know that this is obviously great news for the district, but $250,000 doesn't go very far when you're looking at buildings. For instance, we're getting estimates of hooking up a generator that is that's basically in the $100,000 range just to hook the generator up, and not the generator itself, but just to wire the generator. So it does not go that far. But we will make some recommendations or bring some recommendations to the school committee, or we can certainly bring recommendations to a finance committee in advance of that August school committee meeting, if that's something that you would like us to do.
I have no problem with having another finance committee meeting before the full meeting, which I think we need to do. So if we can get that scheduled, because that gives Nancy some more time to do a final closeout, and that, you know, I can work with her a bit on looking at those 5-year projections and more specifically the 2-year projections, to have those discussions so we can give a little bit more information to the full committee in August.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. All right, we're coming up on our time here, ending together. So let's get that for our next meeting. We'll hear those recommendations. So our next item is the future meetings. If we could get one in close proximity. Robin, can you help us schedule one for just before the regularly scheduled August meeting of the full school committee?
Absolutely. The next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, August 12th. So if the committee prefers a Friday, that would be August 8th, or the Friday before that would be August 1st.
I can make either work.
I can make either work, or even during the week. I know that some people may like their Friday to take a vacation, especially before the school year starts, things like that. So I'm flexible in scheduling.
Is everyone free just that Monday right before the 11th?
Monday would be fine.
Could make that work. Just a question. Are we going to know if I'll just ask. Do we know if Terry's going to be joining the committee, or did we just ask her to join the committee? And if so, should we reach out to her with this date and invitation, or see if it works for her as well?
I did reach out to her. I'll answer that, Patrick. I did reach out to her, and she is willing and wanting to. She would have come today as just a listener, not a voting member, but she is willing to join.
That's great news. So yeah, maybe we see if that date works for her as well before we lock it in.
Yeah. So if not, my second backup would be the Friday the 8th. So that gives us some more flexibility.
Okay.
And again, that doesn't need a formal vote, just discussion. And so now we'll bring us to what we didn't know, but then very quickly acted on for last night, is to bring Carrie on board as a member. So she's been asked, she is willing to do it. So we will have representation from Ashby. We'll be back to having, all of our seats filled on the subcommittee.
She will not be formal. She won't be a formal member until the August 12th meeting because the entire committee has to vote on it. But she can listen in to discussions and all of that.
Oh, right now because we're meeting before, but so she'll be a guest.
And I mean, the thing with the finance committee is we just give a recommendation. It's not a vote for the entire committee. So she still has her opportunity to vote if we do vote a recommendation through.
Okay. Is there anything else that we need to discuss that we didn't anticipate? Well, I'd like to ask everybody, post discussion to go back into the packet and reread everything that Nancy did prepare, look at those numbers and listen carefully to re-listen to the meeting and what she said about we are operating at a deficit, a small deficit in the budget with what she's put together. So while we're excited about some of the numbers, the supplemental and things that come in, we are still in a very tenuous position moving forward. The work paid off. I can't imagine where would be, without all the advocacy and the hard work and the support of our legislators and, folks on this call. So appreciate what community members did, what the administration did to push this forward and let our voices be heard. And Lisa, as you said, we're partners with our community. The school is part of the community. We are not separate from it. We are all in this together. So I appreciate what everybody is doing. And if anybody doesn't have any additional questions, I would entertain a motion to close.
Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
And we don't have to do a roll call. I would say we can just all in favor.
Yes.
Aye. Right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, community members, for listening, and we'll see you in a few weeks.
Thank you.
Bye.